The unholy shall be devoured. We were used to graffiti in our part of town. We were even used to religious nuts telling us we were all going to hell. So when that phrase showed up, painted under a concrete pillar underneath the bridge, nobody really gave it a second thought. Sure, it was higher than most, and it did look professionally done, but it was still graffiti nonetheless. And besides, the list of things people cared about in the second ward was strictly drugs, and then not getting killed, in that exact order. Some people didn't even worry about eating, except once every couple of days, so this unholy business didn't even register. Now, I'm not claiming to be any better than any of the other homeless comrades out here in the tent cities, but I will point out one subtle difference between me and them. I got here by using drugs, sure, but I've only stayed here to sell them. Life and death really isn't a motivator for a lot of lost souls down here, but I'm one of the lucky ones for sure. After my fourth overdose in as many months, I decided to get clean. I'm not sober in the strictest sense of the word, but I only drink and smoke pot to take the edge off into that hard stuff. I'm acting as a middleman now. Not a heavy mover, but one step above the nickel and dime junkies that litter the second ward. I was able to set up a bank account with my mother's address, and I deposit cash every couple of days to decrease the chance of me getting robbed. Another month or so, and I should be able to find a place to live and get out of this tent city that I call home now. When you run drugs out here, information becomes a valuable resource and a second form of income. I know who the junkies are. I know where they get their drug of choice. I know how much money they owe and who's trading sex and other favors for their fix. I know where these people live. I know where they buy it from. I can pretty much find whoever I need by using those two pieces of information. When a customer or two of mine started to go missing, I didn't really pay too much attention initially. We lost customers all the time out here. That's the nature of the business. Even worse, it's always your best customers are the ones you lose, because they're most likely to OD. But in one customer in particular was nowhere to be found, I started to keep my eyes peeled a little more than usual. Jody the Talker, they used to call her, or at least I did. She lived in a tent city down in an old irrigation ditch by the park. She was well liked by everybody because she was like the rest of us out here. She only used enough dope to calm the voices in her head. A diagnosed schizophrenic, you see. She didn't want to be used. She didn't want to be out here. She just wanted to do what she could in order to get a moment of peace. I used to make a mile walk every couple of days just to take her dope. She was always good to talk to, which is part of the reason we gave her the nickname. The other half being, when she didn't get her dope, she never stopped talking to herself. Or I guess you could say the voices. When Jody wasn't there on the last drop, I got a little worried. She was always there, you see. I asked around and nobody had seen her, so when it started getting weird. It was weird to see a bunch of junkies worrying that somebody was missing, but they knew what I knew, and I knew Jody never went anywhere too far from the ditch. I stayed out late that night looking for her, then the next day too. The second night was when everything got fucked up. I was about a half a mile from the ditch, closer to the city. I was checking alleyways, tent cities. Nobody had seen her. I was about to give up and go home when I heard whispers from the alley as I was passing. I took a turn and gripped the knife in my pocket. About halfway through the alley, I saw Jody. She looked fucking terrible. She was on the ground with her hands over her head. I thought I was looking at what the voices did to her without the drugs, but it didn't seem like she was dope sick at all. I found there was a needle next to her, and a bag had fallen out of her jacket. That's when Jody stood up and took off sprinting down the alley. Didn't even bother with the needle or the bag that had fallen out of her pocket. I looked up and down, and I didn't see anything. I didn't see anyone. So I took after her. I chased her 4 or 5 blocks, and then she disappeared into a left-hand turn behind a building. When I turned the corner, my life changed forever. There was a creature standing where Jody should have been. Or I guess still was. It was a grotesque shade of white. Not pale, not translucent, but white. Its mouth was unhinged, and it already had about 3/4 of Jody's body in it. It had giant pink eyes with a dead black in the middle. 2 sets of arms shoving more of Jody in its mouth. God, I wish I could say I stayed and fought for Jody. I wish I could say I even rounded up a junkie militia and we fought that thing and tore it limb to limb. But all I did was run. I ran straight to my tent and I counted the cash I had and went straight for the seedy motel I'm in now. I'll spend the rest of my money. I don't even care. Whatever I do next, the only thing I'm sure of is I won't be perceived as unholy. Not anymore.